There are 7 continents on our planet. A continent is a large section of land that is separated from other areas of land. Most of the time, they are separated by water. The 7 continents are North America, South America, Africa, Europe, Asia, Australia, and Antarctica. The country we are studying today is Antarctica, and it's not actually a country, and it's on its own continent. No one lives there permanently. It has no flag, no history of conquest. Nobody really comes from there or claims it as their nationality. However, there are still some really neat elements of drama concerning the land and that are fun to learn about. Even before the world was fully explored and mapped out, there existed rumors and myths of a large landmass on the south part of the earth that was called Terra Australis, or the southern land, and that it existed for the sole purpose of balancing out the earth, because most of the earth, or the land that people were familiar with at the time, existed on the north part of the planet, and so they thought there was this large body of land on the south part of the planet to balance it out, and I guess keep the world from spinning out of control. For years, this mythical Terra Australis was untouchable to explorers because the length of the journey was so long. And if they ran out of food, there was no place on the Terra Australis to restock. There was no place to get more food. And on top of that, there are dangerous ice fields surrounding it. Eventually, explorers were able to at least see the continent. Then, a little while later, there was someone who was able to land on the continent. Then once people were able to land on the continent, someone wanted to see if they could actually get to what would be the South Pole. Around this time, some countries even began to claim land there, saying it was, like they had done in years past with it. They like to claim lands and say this is part of their new territory. However, around this time, the world essentially came together and made an agreement that Antarctica should remain neutral. That means that it wouldn't belong to any one nation. They also decided that it should be protected. They wanted to protect it against dumping and nuclear testing. A big, wide area of land that nobody lives on is a tempting place to test nuclear bombs. They also wanted to protect it against pollution. They recognized it as a sanctuary to studying the earth and the stars above. Around this time, projects were funded to build research centers near the coast and on the South Pole. Today, there are permanent buildings there for scientists and researchers from any nation to come and study varying topics. The biggest multinational research center is the Amundsen Scott South Pole Station, and it has existed there at the South Pole since 1956. Its name comes from the first 2 explorers to reach the South Pole. Even though Antarctica doesn't have a very large population, you might still be surprised to find out that as many as 1,000 people are in Antarctica during the wintertime, and as many as 5,000 people are there during the summers. Some researchers stay there for long periods of time, and you might imagine, eventually there were kids born there. Although the birth of these people were recognized by the country that the parents came from, there are still a handful of people that have been born on the continent of Antarctica. So why would there be as many as 5,000 people or scientists there just to study Antarctica? Isn't it just ice? The South Pole is quite a bit different from the North Pole. The North Pole is just ice floating on water, but the South Pole is on land, In fact, all of Antarctica is actually a landmass with mountains, volcanoes that even have lava flowing from them. There's valleys, lakes, and rivers. Antarctica is more than twice the size of Australia, and it has active volcanoes, one of which is more than 16,000 feet in height. That's higher than many of the Rocky Mountain peaks. Even though Antarctica is land, it has more than an entire mile of ice on top of it. This means it actually has the highest average elevation of any continent on Earth. Can you imagine that? 1 mile of ice on top of the land? On the surface, there are actually ice rivers, or ice that moves from one area downhill to another area. Here's a little diagram showing where the ice is moving the fastest. The darker areas in this video clip here show where the surface ice is moving the fastest. Antarctica is by far the coldest place on Earth, even much colder than the North Pole. This is mainly because of its elevation. It averages more than a mile in elevation. The South Pole is actually at 9,301 feet above sea level. Compare that to some of the mountains in your area and how high the South Pole actually is. Temperatures at the South Pole can get as cold as negative 130 degrees Fahrenheit. And near the coast of Antarctica, it can get as warm as about 60 degrees Fahrenheit during the summer. Antarctica has beautiful heavenly light shows, just like the ones in the north. When they occur in the South Pole, we call them aurora australis, or the southern lights. Despite the extreme conditions and the cold weather, specially adapted animal and plant life can be found almost everywhere. One of the animals uniquely adapted to live there is the emperor penguin. It is one of the few animals that travels to and breeds on the land of Antarctica. In fact, it is considered to be endemic to Antarctica. Researchers who spend time in Antarctica include biologists, geologists, oceanographers, physicists, astronomers, glaciologists, and meteorologists. Antarctica is a very intriguing place to those of these fields of study. Today, some tourism is gaining popularity, although it will be some time before it is allowed to the extent that people have asked it to be. For now, Antarctica will remain the only continent that nobody really comes from, but lots of people go there to study the Earth and the stars.